Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Motorsports. It is a Thursday afternoon and the Formula One weekend is back. We are in Saudi Arabia for the second Grand Prix weekend of this season. Last weekend we saw a very dominant display by Red Bull 1-2. Although admittedly, even they themselves, they weren't entirely happy with their car. This weekend we expect to see some different changes, a very different circuit, for example, still a Saturday race, still a night race as well, so similarities with regards to that, but a different circuit, a longer but faster circuit, and very different sort of average speed in and around the circuit, so you do expect the cars to fare a little bit differently than they did in the first weekend. Now, before we get going, please do smash like on the video, please do subscribe to the channel as well. Pre-practice gets underway in about 3 minutes time, so still got a little bit of time to get going. I'd like to go and vote on the poll, by the way, where we said which team do you expect to challenge the Red Bulls this weekend. Ferrari at the moment dominating that poll, Mercedes coming in second place, nobody really backing the Aston Martins, and 7% saying another. Probably think you're potentially maybe McLaren dominating those proceedings. But yeah, first practice, so obviously you're going to be not much we can take too much out of this with regards to sort of the final pace, but interesting to see if any sort of teams have done some early good work, for example, as they start to adjust to a different track, different conditions, for example. And another weekend, a fresh weekend. So some teams got off to a pretty slow start last week, and they'll be looking to try and get themselves back into the mix. And I think that teams like Alpine, for example, who just sacked everyone over the last sort of year, or not even last year, the last few months. Very interested to see if that does work. They've made a lot of big decisions given their lack of performance, but looks like we're going to get quite a few cars out quite nice and early. Max Verstappen, for example, busy getting inside his Red Bull. So hopefully we'll get some cars out quite quickly as the practice session does begin in 2 minutes time, and we can start getting some information and start seeing exactly what's going on. Right, Yuki Tsunoda in his RB as well. Obviously, a bit of tension in the air between Tsunoda and his teammate Ricciardo after that incident last weekend. Tsunoda almost crashing into Ricciardo, not particularly happy that he was asked to change positions during that race. But I mean, not that they're really fighting for points. I don't think too much was really up. But if you look at the Constructors' Championship, 44 points for Red Bull last weekend, Ferrari with 27, Mercedes with 16, McLaren with 12, Aston Martin with 3, Kicksauber, Haas, RB, Williams, and Alpine all currently sitting with 0. So Red Bull taking a big early lead, and Ferrari coming up in second place. So time for the teams to start catching up. They don't want to let the Red Bulls get too far ahead, but we'll have to wait and see exactly how that plays out over the next 3 days. Reminder, it will be a Saturday race. I think it is about 7 o'clock track time that they do get underway. So we'll have to let me confirm that. Yeah, track time, it is a 8 o'clock start over at Saudi Arabia. Now, that looks like a Mercedes that's getting ready to go. Especially P1 has officially gone underway, so we're going to move into our studio to get run through some times. And it is Bottas has gone out, by the way. He is on track, and it looks like it's Lewis Hamilton. And Zhou Guanyu is also going to get out nice and early and start seeing what life is like on that Saudi Arabian track. In the comments earlier, we had Barrett Schwartz saying, good poll, but I still feel the Ferrari are going to have more friction between their drivers this weekend, so Mercedes could in fact be challengers to Max and Checo for the top place. Julio is saying, I think McLaren shouldn't be underestimated either. They also prove that they can take on Aston Martin, but they are a threat to Mercedes as well. Good afternoon, TCC. Hope you are well. Let's get into this, shall we? As I said, we've got quite a few cars out on the track, so we start getting some times in. And let's sort of see. In terms of the tyre compound, by the way, Bottas has gone out on a set of mediums. Hamilton on some medium, on hard, as well as Zhou Guanyu. Sainz on hard, Leclerc on hards. We've got mediums and Hülkenberg and Albon, so quite a mixture of tyres out over there as majority of the cars get themselves onto the track and get going. Aston Martin's last weekend, maybe a little bit disappointing. I'll be interested to see how they fared this weekend. Lewis Hamilton saying the surface temperature still looks pretty low there on the radio. But let's wait before we start getting some official lap times. And good to see the Ferraris out nice and early as well. And Valtteri Bottas is probably set to be our first lap time of the afternoon. We will have the evening session a bit later. That'll be at about 7 o'clock. And we're going to be live with you throughout the weekend. And yeah, it's going to be all the various stations. We're also going to be looking at doing a bit of Moto GP, by the way, something a bit different this weekend. So we'll be covering that sprint race as well as the Grand Prix. So we'll be able to get into that this weekend as well. Something a bit different here on Forever Motorsports. But we ran a tracker last week for the WEC, the World Endurance Championship. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of falls out. I know two of the drivers there, so be hoping to try and maybe even get them on the channel, for example, which would be quite a lot of fun. But let's see. Here about that, Russell's gonna beat Hammy again this weekend. So nice bit of an internal competition between the Mercedes. It will be quite fun to sort of start seeing how that plays out. But here we go. Got Sainz on a lap at the moment. We're still waiting for teams to set an official lap so far.
Just wanted to go through a few last final checks and speak to the team before they decide who's going to be in the car. Is thankfully in the car for this first practice session. Tell me about the car you need around here. It's a very different circuit to Bahrain, but it's more digital street.
I think it's a circuit where you need.
Right, so still waiting on official first time, but most of the cars out there, in fact, I think it's only Verstappen, Lone Sargent, Ricciardo, and Magnussen who are not out there at the moment. So we'll wait and see when they eventually go out. And Bottas goes through in the first lap of the day with a 1:33. Hamilton obviously goes a bit faster there with a 1:32. So now we're starting to get some lap time in, and Hamilton so far the fastest on a set of hards, by the way, worth noting. I expect to see, interested to see how Sainz comes through in this first lap. That would sort of be my guess as to who will go fastest early on. Sainz comes through, doesn't quite go as fast. Gasly comes through second fastest so far. And yeah, as usual, you'll sort of see the cars out quite nice and early. They'll get some laps in, and then they'll come in for a few tweaks as they start to set up this car for the weekend ahead. As you say, if you look at that sort of track, it's a very different track to Bahrain. It's very long. I think it's actually a bit longer in theory than the Bahrain in terms of the official length of it, but lap times are quicker because of you just look at it. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of speed across this track. A lot of straights, for example, not too sort of windy. But Hamilton so far still the fastest on the track. Norris, Piastri clocking some times. Leclerc coming in faster than Sainz as well. The both Ferraris on hard at the moment. George Russell is just gone out, but hasn't recorded a time just yet. Verstappen is out, by the way. So everybody is out on the track. Very interesting information, some story, by the way, is that the female complainant for in the Red Bull case with Christian Horner has in fact been suspended. Apparently, I just saw that now by Red Bull, so that's pretty big news coming there. So we'll have a video up after this, just going through that. So that's quite an interesting update on that whole story. The fact that obviously they're backing Christian Horner very much in this situation by the virtue of the fact that she has been suspended. Other information, by the way, is that Carlos Sainz is not well. He is sick. He's been struggling with stomach issues, but is just decided to go out anywhere. And also, apparently, we should be hearing some information from Audi tomorrow about their takeover of Sauber. So that is set to be 2026, where they're set to make their debut. Leclerc goes fastest there. But apparently a big announcement potentially expected tomorrow with regards to that entire sort of takeover and that sort of situation. It'll be very cool to see what Audi looks like, especially with their driver lineup come 2026 in 2 years' time. But there we go. Sergio Perez, the Red Bull going faster. Leclerc currently second fastest. Verstappen yet to record an official lap time so far, as is Ricciardo, Magnussen, and Logan Sargent. And there is the man in question, Christian Horner, looking pretty sternly on. It can't be an easy situation over at Red Bull at the moment. You know, regardless of the fact that at the moment he's been all clear and stuff like that, given the fact that there's now an update where apparently the employee itself has been suspended, it can only be a messy environment in that garage. It can't be fun. And that's what Jos Verstappen last week had a big issue with, was, for example, had apparently a big argument with Japers, me looking at the Ferrari going so close to the wall over there. And apparently now potentially looking at stories about Max Verstappen potentially leaving Mercedes, apparently leading the charge to try and sign him if he were to leave Red Bull. Jos Verstappen basically said that if Christian Horner were to continue, that the team could be torn apart from the inside due to sort of the internal issues there. But a couple of lap times coming in here. Alex Albon looking a lot better this week than last week. We've got Sergio Perez still clocked the fastest lap. Pierre Gasly up there will give the Alpines a little bit of something to celebrate. Still no time so far from Logan Sargent, the only one who hasn't recorded an official time. Verstappen currently sitting with the 5th fastest lap. So the 132, so we'll see that go down over the course of the day. Very keen to see what the sort of times we see tonight in similar conditions. But at the moment, the track temperature is 40.8 degrees over in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah. The air temperature sitting at about 27 degrees, 58% humidity. That is Roberto Firmino in the pits, by the way, former Liverpool striker. And the pressure, in case anybody cares, is 112, and there's no rain predicted. There's a 16.6 kilometer northerly wind with about 50 minutes remaining, or 51 minutes remaining on the clock for practice. And Lando Norris currently just cruising around, as he's just gone faster, by the way, the 131. So first driver to go under that 132 mark for the weekend. And yeah, we had Zach Brown last weekend on the comms during over the weekend, was saying that they're not expecting to be too competitive too early on, and they're hoping that as the season goes, but like last weekend, that as the season goes, they'll then start to catch up and be competitive. But I think that might have been maybe a little bit of mind games, because I think that there is some pace in that McLaren, and I think that they can be competitive a lot sooner. Alonso, by the way, has just gone fastest, and he's just broken the 131, so we'll start to see those sub 130s, I think, pretty soon. The hard tire at the moment is working for him, as well as Hamilton. So far, the Aston Martin fastest, Mercedes has taken place. The two McLarens up there, Carlos Sainz going faster than Leclerc. Very keen to see how that sort of relationship goes over the weekend. Going to some of the comments, by the way. Barrett saying 66.2 kilometers per lap, a non-abrasive surface, 1 pit stop race. And Pure Blood saying, I want Max to go to Merck. Russell is a very good driver, so we can see how good Max really is. It is hard to tell versus Perez. And Old Man Roo saying, good morning all, midnight in Australia. Well, yeah, I suppose, you know, Australia it's quite a difficult time zone to watch from. And we know this because of how difficult it is for us to watch the Australian Grand Prix. I think the first practice of the weekend is about 3:30 in the morning down here in South Africa. So that's going to be a fun one to do. So yeah, I hope we can keep you awake for the next sort of 45 minutes or 50 minutes odd of the first practice. And that's Lance Stroll going pretty wide over there. What do you have to say? Saying I had touched the wall. So a bit of a mistake there. Oh yeah, I touched the one that left front tire. Just clipping the wall there. So a bit of a mistake there from Lance Stroll. His teammate currently the fastest on track. Verstappen, by the way, has gone to second fastest. Right, Daniel Ricciardo out and on a hot lap here. His teammate admitting that he needs to learn to control his motions a little bit better after they had a bit of a fallout last weekend. So not a particularly good start for the Visa Cash App Team RB. Hopefully things will be a little bit less dramatic between the two this weekend. But let's get an idea of where Ricardo is in that RB, because I think that internal battle is going to be quite interesting between Ricardo and Tsunoda. Whether they'll ever sort of start to really get to that sort of top 10s, we'll have to wait and see. But from a Ricardo point of view, back in a seat this year, will need to outperform his teammate at the very, very least. And he's going to come through at a 132.723. So it does go faster than Tsunoda so far, as the timing starts to represent sort of the main teams, kind of what you expect to see in that top 10. Maybe Alex Albon being sort of the odd one out. But the two Ferraris there, there's one Aston Martin in there, the two McLarens, both Red Bulls in there, both McLarens, both Mercedes. So it's Albon who's in there, and Lance Stroll at the moment, he hasn't set a particularly fast lap as of yet. And he's, in fact, back in the pits is Lance Stroll, having to look at that front left, well, maybe look at the front wing, after he did touch the front left on the wall earlier. Bit of mistake there from Lance Stroll. Have a look at that replay here. Just goes just a bit too close to the corner there. Just that's what sent him wide. We have to see. Yeah, you can see quite a bit of damage actually coming off that that front left. There might be a bit of a longer pit stop than initially. Looks like a new front wing's going to come on. Not an ideal start to be clipping the wall in the first practice session. Meanwhile, we're currently looking at Charles Leclerc, who's currently just a bit faster than his teammate. But Alonso's still with the fastest lap, and you can just see some repairs going on the Aston Martin there. Time slowly starting to fall here. We're almost 50 minutes into the first practice session. Let's see what Leclerc could do here. And Russell, in fact, actually goes fastest here. And Leclerc comes in just behind him with a 130.9. So not terrible from Charles Leclerc. Forgot to get more water. That's a rookie error. Oh, got a bit of water in here. Right, as it stands, George Russell the fastest on the track. Verstappen, by the way, has gone second fastest there. He said a 130.9, but Russell's 130.8 is still the fastest. Very keen to see if we might see those cars go on to the medium a bit later, and what that can do. At the moment, track temperature dropped slightly, but holding firm at around that 40-degree mark. Still plenty of time to go in this session. And a couple more cars back in the pit. Both McLarens currently in the pit. Nico Hulkenberg in the pit. So both Haas there as well. The one Sauber, both RBs in the pit. Sorry, still out there. Right, so the good news, by the way, is the channel has officially gone past 2,500 subscribers. So thank you very much. If you are new, by the way, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Let's see how many subscribers we can find, new people if we can find across the weekend. The entire race weekend will be on Forever Motorsports. All the sessions, the 3 practices, 2 practices, the 3 practices, the qualifying, and the race all will be on the channel as well. We will also have F2. There is qualifying for that after this. So we will have that on the channel as well. That starts at 5 o'clock. That'll be over on the second stream of the day, which is the official Formula One Free Practice 2 stream. That gets underway at 7 o'clock local time. Russell sitting a faster second sector in this lap. And I think he's gone slightly faster. He has gone slightly faster. Hamilton complaining that the rear bouncing, so not happy in his Mercedes at the moment. Riding on board with Max Verstappen. Yeah, as we mentioned earlier, very, very fast track here. We reckon that they're averaging about 20 miles per hour faster than they do in Bahrain. So it's exciting. You want to see fast tracks. There's also nitros once again. So it'll be a while before we see a bit of racing in the light. But as I said, we've got a poll in the comments saying which team do you expect to challenge the Red Bull this weekend. I say so far Ferrari, but they've dropped off a little bit. So what do you think? Who do you think is going to challenge the Red Bulls this weekend? Is it going to be Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, a different team, for example? We have one of the Red Bulls that looks like Max Verstappen. He's just coming to the pit here. So who are you backing to challenge the Red Bulls? Go and vote in that poll. Get 133 votes. I'm going to close it off at 150. And then I want to get an idea of who everybody supports. What the sort of the big fan base, obviously, expect Red Bull and Ferrari to be the big fan base. McLaren should have pretty good support. Mercedes, for their success in the last 15 years, should have a decent amount of support. And a lot of people start getting back behind Aston Martin because of Fernando Alonso. Here comes one of the Ferraris into the pits as well. That's Carlos Sainz. Right, so yeah, as expected, we're about 20 minutes into the practice, so a lot of the teams have been out there for about 15 to 20 minutes, and they got all the information they need. Now they're going to spend a bit of time in the pits, resetting the car up, making a few tweaks, and Sergio Perez currently on a hot lap here, getting up to speeds of 330 kilometers an hour. Yeah, 332 there at turn 27, just for turn 27 at that speed trap. And he goes second fastest, setting a fastest third sector there, Sergio Perez. He goes slightly faster than his teammate. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him come in now. When you're looking just how close he's getting to these walls over here. Slightly oversteer, I think, there from the Max Verstappen. Yeah, saying it's loose there. I'll tell you what, I think it's Charles Leclerc. It's almost gotten to the back of, I think it's a Red Bull there. Looking at George Russell, marching the curve there. So a lot of the cars back in the pits here, not too many out. In fact, I think Sergio Perez is on his way out at the moment. Looking at the track dominance there, so Russell fastest amongst most of it. Hamilton's got some pace through turn 1, 4, 6, and 14 in comparison to his teammates, who then dominates the rest of the track. 27 turns officially across the track. Right, we've got an Alpine that's still out there. Sorry, it's an RB. It's out there. Daniel Ricciardo on a hot lap here. Currently sitting 15th fastest. His teammate has gone faster than him so far in the last few. Let's go some of the comments, see what everybody else say over here. Julia's saying the Max Mercedes talk is just talk right now. I think we'll probably have to wait till there's a decision about Horner, although I'd love to see Max and literally anything else but a Red Bull. Interestingly enough, I think a lot of people would like to see him. I think a lot of people would like to see, obviously there's always the, you're only as good as the car you drive chat, for example. We had that conversation and that rhetoric when Hamilton was doing so well. You have to be fair and then say, well, have to be a similar conversation when Verstappen's doing so well. So if we can see him in a different car, then that would obviously give us an indication of exactly where he's at. Pureblood's saying the investigation has cleared Horner. He is staying. Well, I think there was the right to appeal, and obviously there's also the fact that all the information was sent to the team principals, and now apparently they're demanding a statement from the FIA, for example, or information, or to find out what the story is there. So maybe not as finished as we might have thought. GoPro Gamer said, which Hamilton regains pole position? Valkenberger saying, if you want to see how good Max is, simply look at how little mistakes he makes and compare that to other drivers. Is that simple? Yes, it is that simple. You're right, but if we're being honest, last season, for example, it was quite easy for him not to make mistakes because he was cruising with a flipping like 10 to 15 second lead within the first few laps, and then he just kind of had to remain disciplined. So you can't take away from that. I think he is currently the best driver on the grid, but it'll be interesting to see how good he is. For example, you got Alonso, who's getting every last bit out of that Aston Martin. Can Verstappen get every last bit out of a slower car, for example, and remain competitive? That's kind of what people want to know. Whether it'll happen, I mean, as a Max Verstappen, what would you do? Why would you leave the fastest car, which is going to win you championships and championships and championships, and going to make you one of the best drivers ever? Why would you leave that? Zetok saying, what is going to be qualifying time? Do you think 1.2, 128? Yeah, so I think it was about a 128 flat almost last year when Sergio Perez was on pole. So in theory, the car should be a bit faster this year. That's kind of what we kind of hope that, every year they get better, faster, stronger. But yeah, so looking at probably about that 128 sort of mark, it will be, I think, you'll need to get below 129 if you are to be in that sort of that top sort of 5-6, I reckon. Last year, getting a 129 or getting a 128. So I'm just looking at 129.9 was elimination in the first in Q3 last year or Q1 last season. So you've got to get below 130 and below that with a bit to spare apparently to get into Q2. If anything, if like last year's anything to look at. Last season, by the way, Max Verstappen out in Q2. If we looked at the grid, it was Perez, Leclerc, for Alonso, Russell, Sainz, Stroll, Ocon, Hamilton, Piastri, Pierre Gasly in that Q3. Sergio Perez coming out on top there in qualifying. But we all know, and he actually won that race, Sergio Perez, from pole. But Max Verstappen coming in from 15th to cruise home in the second place. Fernando Alonso getting a second consecutive podium last season in the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. So I don't know how excited we all were that Fernando Alonso was back, was on podiums, was getting good pace, for example, and we wondered if we might see him potentially push for a win. Wasn't to be, but this is a new season, and maybe we'll see something different. TCC saying Max and George at Mercedes will make F1 very exciting. I agree. GoPro Gamer saying, comment your favorite F1 driver. Well, there we go. Let us know who your favorite driver is. Obviously, I was the Michael Schumacher fan growing up. That was kind of who I watched, and what a pleasure to have him at his best. Rubens Barrichello, for example, Kimi Raikkonen at his best. Watched the young Sebastian Vettel come through. And individual says that as long as Newey's at RB, Max is going to stay. Valkenberger says, when Max at Toro Rosso, the question was, can Max consistently win in a fast car? I don't see why those years don't count anymore. I don't think anyone's saying they don't count, but that's kind of just the nature of it, isn't it? He's now proven that he is the best in the fast car. He is, and I don't think anyone's going to agree that he's currently the best driver on the grid. But how good is he? Now we're thinking he's the best current driver. He's somebody that wants to be remembered as one of the best ever. So if you want to be remembered as one of the best ever, for example, how do you build that sort of legacy? Is it just winning, 7, 8 championships in the same car? Or is it being able to go to different teams, different cars, and still being able to win? How do you judge, the best, drivers ever, for example? So that's the other chap you used to present with. So myself, Mark, and Reese, we all kind of switching around as the weekend goes. Everybody's obviously got different things going on at the moment. So we've got a team, and the various team members will be across over the weekend. So I think Mark will be back with you guys tomorrow for qualifying. Reese will be with you with the race on Saturday. So we will sort of be taking it turns. I'll be with you guys at this stage later as well. And we'll be with you for practice 3 tomorrow, which is obviously our last practice before we see qualifying tomorrow evening. And hopefully we should really get some fast times. As Alex Albon goes third fastest after spending a bit of time in the pits there. Already we're starting to almost threaten that 130 barrier there. And Norris gone over with a 1.30. Individual one saying, I think Carlos stays out of F1 next year if he truly has a huge Audi contract for 26. Desta says, so the data is all from a various data advice that we get from. Eric's saying, we all know Max is best. And GoPro Gamer saying, I just went to Lewis Ferrari. Individual one said, who would sign Carlos for 1 year and then have him leave? This is based on if Carlos has an Audi contract. Barrett Swart saying, I was always the odd one out as I supported Eddie Irvine. Yeah, damn, I know, but he did finish runner up 1 year in Ferrari. Well, everyone's got their sort of favorites and drivers that they like. And sometimes it's quite nice to be alternative. I always think it's quite cool to support a team that's not necessarily, challenging for a title. I grew up being a youngster, you wanted to win, so I grew up, watching Ferrari win and became a Ferrari fan. And now it's frustrating because, you grow up watching them win championships, and now the only thing you really care about is winning championships. Whereas, for example, you are a Haas fan, for example, and it's about, well, can we get points? And where can we finish, for example? And it's a different sort of attitude, but it's quite fun to have that kind of jeopardy there. Pureblood saying lots of teams potentially, if we haven't had steady season, certain teams lose their best driver. And Zadok saying, I think if Max would have stayed at RB, but Sainz also goes to RB, well, we're going to get a good season. Sainz has proven himself against Leclerc, while Ferrari leans more towards Leclerc than Sainz. Not a bad point being made there at all. So Lando Norris, by the way, is fastest at the moment with a 130.4. So it'll be interesting to see if we can see those sub 130s tonight in the second practice session. There's officially, by the way, halfway in the practice session. So just about 29 minutes left of FP1 before we take a break, and we do this all again in 3 hours' time. Right, we're currently watching Zhou Yu going around in that very nice looking Kicksauber. Not a fan of the name, but the car itself looks very, very nice. Stake F1 Team Kicksauber. Bit of a mouthful, but if he keeps them going, he keeps them going. Go and say who he's sporting in the practice too. Well, I said I'm a Ferrari fan, so I want to see my Ferraris up there. But obviously, Fernando Alonso is one of my favorite all-time drivers, so it'd be cool to see him up there. Like to see Danny Rick doing quite well. I quite enjoy Pierre Gasly. Not a massive Lando Norris fan, so I always quite enjoy seeing Piastri do quite well there. Zhou Yu losing it a bit. Yeah, struggling a little bit there is Zhou Yu in that Sauber. Ironically, when he's busy going around corners and struggling, and on the back of his rear wing there it says unleashed. So maybe taking it a bit too literally at the moment, but Verstappen now on a hot lap. Let's see what he can do here. On softs, by the way, are some of the drivers now. So Norris on softs, there, Russell on softs, Albon on softs, Verstappen on a pair of softs, Ocon on softs. So all the drivers now switching to that soft compound. Interesting to see how that sort of change. As I said, if we do start to see that sub 130, I mean, we've got 130.424 by Lando Norris at the moment. Verstappen is up, fastest first sector there. So could we see our first sub 130 lap of the weekend from the current championship leader, the reigning champion, and as we mentioned, the best driver on the grid at the moment. He has set a fastest first sector. Let's see if he can set a fastest second sector. Needs to go there below 1.01.4. I think he might just do it. He is still 0.2 of a second faster through that second sector. So on track, probably not good. Maybe not break though that 1.3 barrier unless he gets and finds another 0.3 of a second through the final sector. But looking pretty fast now is Max Verstappen. Right, coming up, and you'll go across the line in a 130.014. So he did pick up 0.2 of a second, or almost just under 0.2 of a second, but doesn't quite break that 1.30 barrier. So it's threatening. We're threatening to get to the times we're going to see in qualifying, but not quite there just yet. Robert saying there's also the Honda elements taken into account with Sonoda, money, politics, and contractual obligations all count as much as talent speed. Yeah, talking about the fact that Yuki Tsunoda apparently could be at risk of losing his seat. I would wonder if I think Red Bull might be getting a bit bored of Yuki Tsunoda. He's just so much drama always surrounding him. Had a bit of a fight last weekend with Danny Ricciardo. I almost drove into Ricciardo. And really appreciated that. And to be fair to Yuki, to come out and say that his emotions got the better of him, he needs to learn to control them. But not the first time, is it? You know, Yuki Tsunoda does have a hot head. He is a bit like that. A lot of complaints coming from him. He does enjoy a bit of a moan every now and again. So, but you know, which is, if you're performing, you know, you can kind of accept and you can kind of deal with. If you're not performing, for example, and you have to deal with the attitude and all the stuff like that, you start there thinking, well, why are we putting up with this? You know, why are we backing this guy to this extent if he's, you know, not delivering the results? George Russell, by the way, has got even closer to breaking that 130 mark. He's literally 0.01 tenths of a second off that there. So I reckon we might see that. I reckon we will see that be broken this session with about 25 minutes left to go. Still plenty of time. Charles Leclerc now coming on a hot lap. Let's see what he can do. Coming up to that first end of the first sector. He's not quite there. He's 0.3 of a second slower. So I don't think we're going to see him set fastest lap just far. Hülkenberg moving up a little bit there. But interesting to see the Mercedes does have some pace. George Russell was fastest in the sort of the opening session, or the opening rounds there. He's fastest again once at the moment. Blanchard, by the way, since clipping that wall, has not come out yet. Lewis Hamilton, by the way, and Charles Leclerc very slow through that second sector. He's almost a second in behind. So not a particularly good lap this from Charles Leclerc. Hamilton, he's just 0.2 of a second up, so he's a bit closer to his teammate. Depending on that third sector, he could be in and around that fastest time. But you expect him to be well below that 131, maybe probably on 130.4. And Hamilton comes through with a 130.257. So he's got fourth fastest. So the two Mercedes both seem to have a bit of pace around the track so far. Hamilton taking a bit of a scenic route there. James Vowles, by the way, from the Williams, will be the team principal on the comms over the weekend. We had Zach Brown from McLaren last weekend. The McLaren's at the moment, by the way, not slow. Lando Norris is just 0.2 of a second back from Russell. Piastri hasn't quite managed to get under the 131 just yet. There's some more comments over there. Says, bro, do you think that Lewis will win an 8th world champion title? I don't know. I think it all comes down to next season. I don't think he'll compete this season. But if Ferrari can give him a car next season, then you never know. You never know. Right, so we've got about 21 minutes left of the first practice. And as you can see on the screen there, George Russell the fastest. Nobody yet to go below that 130, which is what I said was where we're going to be at. Verstappen said, just one thing, I had some weird engine behavior in turn 13, a little bit later in the lap. And when I was off throttle, the car was jumping a lot. Having said that, he's just gotten the fastest through the first sector. So Verstappen loves to complain once he's not like he's busy bringing lap times down, does he? Does show you, for example, first of all, how good he is. But it's always funny when you hear how he's got an issue. Yeah, now he's just under a 10th of a second faster than that George Russell lap. So if he continues at pace, we'll be the first one to go under that 1 minute 30 mark, which is where we expect to see the cars over the weekend when it comes to qualifying tomorrow evening. Might even see that tonight. Right, and let's see if he can get under that 1.3. Yep, he does bring it down. 3.5 tenths of a second faster, and he's the first one to go below that 1 minute 30 margin into a 129.659. Max Verstappen so far fastest in the first practice, looking to try and dominate the weekend from the get-go, is the reigning champion, and that is, I think, George Russell leaving the pits. Or no, is it Fernando Alonso? Who's that? Trying to work out if it's a green or it's no, it is a Mercedes. And I think that is the Mercedes of George Russell. Is he looking at the corner analysis there? It's been quite interesting. You've seen quite a lot of comparisons over here between the two Mercedes. Leclerc, by the way, he sets a much better lap and gets going now. Individual saying RB is going to win the championship this year and next year. All the money is going to 26 with the new rigs. Barrett says, by now, after how many seasons, Tsunoda needs to mature a tad. I agree. I 100% agree. I think they'll need to see improvement from Tsunoda this weekend. Right, let's see if we can just get a hot lap in here from, I think George Russell's still warming up the tyres. I don't think he's on a hot lap. No, he's not. I'm asking why the Ferrari is so low down here at the moment. Yeah, they haven't quite been having the same pace there. They're not massively off. Well, I suppose they're almost a second off of the leading time, which is Max Verstappen so far. Right, there comes Hamilton. He's on a hot lap now. We're going into a hot lap. There it is. Across the start. Right, let's see what he's got. We've seen Russell be quite a bit faster than him, about 2 3/10 of a second faster than him so far in the session. So let's see if the former world champion, one of the best drivers of all time, can outpace his teammate in this first session over in Saudi Arabia. Before we take a 2-week break, there'll be no race next weekend. And then we're into Australia, which is reportedly set to return to the start of the Formula One calendar in 2025. So if you grew up watching a lot of Formula One, you would have known that the calendar used to always start with Australia. Back in a few years ago, that made that sort of change. We had Bahrain and now Saudi, but it looks like Australia could be returning to the beginning of the calendar, which will be cool to see. Back in the Mark Webber days, he used to try and win his home Grand Prix. A lot of good news, by the way, for Aston Martin, that Lance Stroll is not only out and back on the track after clipping the wall, but that he is in the top 10 fastest at times at the moment. He sits just under a second off the pace and a little bit faster than his teammate Fernando Alonso. So good to see that they managed to fix the issues with his car. And Hamilton not quite faster than his teammate just yet. George Russell just under that 1.30. And there's a message that's set to go out to George on the pit wall. George Russell saying, we'll just try and keep the speed up on this lap. As you see, a couple of the radios that's on the bottom right screen there. So if you can read that, that's some of the team radios coming through live as we go. Leclerc on a fast lap here. Let's see what he can do. Currently 7th fastest in the session. Approaching the end of the second sector. And he's just 0.2 of a second. It's a little bit better from Leclerc. Currently almost 0.8 of a second off the fastest lap. So and he's just driven over a plastic bag. Speed trap there. Ricardo's gone fastest through that turn over there with 339 kilometers an hour. Insane, isn't it? And Leclerc goes a bit faster than his former time there. He doesn't quite get under at 130, but does manage to bring his time a bit up. And the Ferrari's back up into the top 4. DMX, I kind of wish they came to South Africa. It would have been so cool. Well, we were on the brink, weren't we? We were getting there. We were getting close to getting a race down here. And then in typical fashion, people wanted more money, etc., etc. And now we don't have a race. And you know what the annoying thing is? I can literally hear when there's the Kyalami 9 hour. I'm like 2Ks from Kyalami. Like literally 2Ks from Kyalami. I think I have to go, let me think, right, left. And I'm at Kyalami. I've got less than 5 turns from my house to Kyalami. And that's how close I could have been to being at the Grand Prix if they come here. But no, we have to stuff it all up. And now there's no Grand Prix anytime soon at the moment. But hopefully we continue to push for that. We need to get it for a Grand Prix down in Africa. We all know that South Africa will be the destination. Kyalami makes the most sense. Let's get this done, people. We have a couple of South African drivers in the World Endurance Championship at the moment, the two Van Linde brothers. So we're not going to see the South African in a Formula One car anytime soon, I don't think. But it will be cool to the fact that they are out there driving endurance race. I think both of them set to do the 24 hours of Le Mans, which is quite cool. If you're a South African motorsports fan, keep monitoring that because we will probably be covering the Le Mans because of those two. And if you're a Formula 1 fan, well, Mick Schumacher is currently driving in the WEC. So he's driving for Alpine, which could obviously give him an opportunity to get back into Formula 1. So I think that was definitely a part of his decision to go there. The fact that there is that potential avenue back into Formula 1. Probably would replace, I don't know if you'd replace Ocon or Gasly. But the Red Bull so far fastest, by the way. Sergio Perez clocking in at 129.868. So just 3 drivers so far breaking that 1.30 barrier with 30 minutes left to go on the clock. Right, so let's close that poll, which is 476 votes, and let's check what the results are. So Red Bull, we asked who would you expect to challenge the Red Bull. Ferrari 58%, Mercedes 30%, Aston Martin 3%, and other with 7%. So that's kind of where we're asking who you reckon everybody's who could potentially be challenging that Red Bull. We're going to put another poll up, though, and the poll we're going to put up is which team do you support? And I'm going to put the favorites up. So I'll put up Red Bull, and I'll put in Ferrari, and I'll put in Mercedes, and then I'll put in other. And let's see how many we've got. How many other fans we've got. And if you are a fan of a different team, let me know in the comments. So if you are an Alpine fan, for example, then put them in the comments that you're an Alpine fan. Let us know. Don't just say other. Vote other and then go and tell us exactly who. Let's get an idea. Julia is saying that Alpine seems to have improved despite losing half their staff. Yeah, well, I mean, literally, there must be about 4 people left in the garage. But they are a bit quicker this session. It's a bit like last week, actually, where we had the 2 horses right at the bottom, but they improved as the weekend went by. Alpine were pretty dreadful the entire weekend last weekend, it must be said. So they need to improve. They've made some big calls. They've sacked half the team there. I mean, I think it's like team principal, lead engineer, lead this, and that. It's like all the main top dogs that you could want to be top. They're all gone. Yeah, not good last weekend, finishing 17-18. So they'll want to be at least want somebody a little bit higher than that over on the weekend on Saturday when we get to the race. Gary says, sorry, Mick Schumacher lacks talent. He does not deserve a place in any tier above any current driver except maybe Logan Sargent. Well, I think maybe that's, he had an opportunity, didn't manage to keep his seat. Now he needs to go and do the hard yards. He needs to go to a different format, for example, and maybe earn his way back. Maybe he doesn't earn his way back. But, yeah, I think that is the reason why he did go to Alpine, though. So he's got that kind of route, that option. Gray saying he's an Aston Martin fan. So at the moment, we've got Red Bull. It's actually very close between Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. Actually, the least supporter, but other got 24. This is a very cool poll, actually. I think I got this quite right. 65 votes. Very, very keen to see where this ends up. I mean, it's literally, I'm watching it like, this is almost more exciting than what I'm seeing on track here. Which, by the way, has Alonso at second fastest. So he's managed to split the 2 Red Bulls before, whilst he's still out there at the moment. The rest of the majority of everybody's back in the track there. Verstappen is still out there, but Perez, Russell, both Ferraris, Hamilton, Stroll, all back in the pits. They'll probably get a few more laps just before going out. Probably in about 5 minutes' time. Get 5 minutes out on the track right towards the end. But I'm just very interested in this poll. That's kind of had me watching more than anything because it's very, very interesting. Got 2 Aston Martin fans, and interestingly, I'd like to know, no judgment if it is, but what made you become Aston Martin fans? Was it the Fernando Alonso move, for example? So are you Alonso fans that have now moved with him to Aston Martin? I always find Formula 1 quite interesting as a sport in terms of people supporting drivers versus just teams. For example, I'm a Ferrari fan. I was never a particular driver fan. Now you've got people who are driver fans. So, for example, somebody might be a Lando Norris fan. So if he goes to Red Bull, for example, you'll support him at Red Bull. If he goes to Mercedes, you'll support him at Mercedes. Where some people are more team fans. So, for example, you might really like Max Verstappen, but you're a Red Bull fan. If he leaves Red Bull, you no longer support Red Bull, you support Max Verstappen. So it's an interesting sort of dynamic that we see. So, by the way, we've got 2,537 subscribers. I'd really like to get us to 2,600 by the end of the session. So we need about 60 odd of you to subscribe. There's over 500 people watching. So I'm pretty sure we can get there if you guys start hitting that subscribe button over there as we enter the final few minutes of the first practice. Barrett said, I heard that the organizers that punted for the Kyalami race were doing the punt for their very last attempt for the 2023 race. They were dismantling themselves after the last try and fail 23. Yeah, we listened to, so we kind of knew somebody who was involved. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of money issues that are there. Dylan saying Aston Martin because of Vettel. Barrett says, anyone have any knowledge of the above? I said, yeah, I mean, we heard that there's a bit of a money issue there in terms of various different agreements. The F1 up saying, I don't think Verstappen will go to Mercedes. He's too much of a prize possession to Red Bull, and they will do anything they can to keep him. I think that Carlos Sainz will replace Hamilton. Yeah, as somebody mentioned, if Sainz has that Red Bull, I mean that Audi contract for 2026, then it'd be interesting to see if he does have a seat next season. Does he go somewhere for a year, for example? What does he do? Does he go to Sauber for a year before the takeover? Where does he go? But we're currently riding on board with Alexander. I'm sorry, with Ocon. As I said, so Russell's back out on track, as is Verstappen, as is Sainz. Leclerc not quite just yet. Ricciardo going faster than his teammate there at the moment. So that's quite a cool little internal battle. He's just gone faster with a 130.9. Still quite a long way back from the leading sort of times at the moment. And just 1/10 a second between the two teammates there. So that should be quite an interesting battle to follow over the weekend. My poll, however, continues to look quite interesting. Mercedes currently leading it. 152 votes so far as we continue to go there. Did you start supporting Ferrari because of Sebastian Vettel? No, I started supporting Ferrari before Sebastian Vettel, actually. It was the Schumacher era, which got me into Ferrari. And it was Ferrari. It was cool. It was always going to be a difficult one to move away. You got the best driver, the coolest team, for example. F1 heritage. But yeah, DMX, I started watching F1 when I was 7 years old in the year 2000. I loved Merc since the beginning. Gary saying, since my first SA GP at Colombia in 1967, I've been a driver supporter, not necessarily a team supporter. Well, there we go. That's an interesting concept. And also it says, what holds higher prestige in F1, drivers, champ, or constructors? That's an interesting question. I don't know, actually. I mean, if you're you kind of feel that the drivers one is probably the most the big one. Who won the title. It is quite an individual sport. I think I'd be interested to know. I mean, if you're Christian Horner, for example, do you prefer Max Verstappen winning the drivers' championship, or do you want to prefer him winning the constructors? What do you prefer? So it's an interesting concept. I think for a general F1 fan, they'll probably say the drivers feels more important. You prefer that sort of individual rivalry. You'd rather sort of look at the rivalry between 20 people than 10 people. It's bigger, there's more variables, for example. Whereas if you've got one dominant team, they are like like Red Bull, they kind of just walk the constructors every year at the moment. Grace says, thoughts on Stroll this year, or if you'll continue to hold Aston back? Well, at the moment, he's faster than Alonso. So he's an interesting one, was Lance Stroll, because everyone knows that he's not the driver Fernando Alonso is, but he had some good results last season. And if you look at last weekend, they had a 9-10 finish, so he finished with a single point. So yeah, I mean, I think that as long as he continues to keep up with Alonso, he'll be okay. If there's this massive gap between the two, then then obviously questions will be asked. But Daddy Stroll is going to keep him in that seat for as long as he can. Right, so Logan Sargent not particularly happy with one of the Ferraris there. A couple of expletives being shouted on the radio there. The live delivery book said, if I'm not wrong, Bottas could come back to Merc. And Robert's saying, why Aston Martin, a classic car brand with a great history? It's interesting to see a team develop. Also, the Vettel Alonso aspect. Plus, although Canadian owned, the brand is still seen as British. Well, there we go. Asked and answered. And can't fault any of the reasoning either. We're into the last 3 minutes of, wait for it. Now we're into the last 3 minutes of the first practice session. Lance Stroll currently on a hot lap. If we look at the fastest time so far, it is Verstappen at fastest, Alonso at second there, Perez at third, Russell at fourth. The two Ferraris, followed by the McLaren of Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll, Alex Albon completing that 10. If we then look at Sauber of Bottas, then Ricciardo, Ocon, Sargent, Piastri, Tsunoda, Gasly, Zhou Guanyu, and the two Haas's very much off the pace, down in 19th and 20th. So they'll need to find a bit of pace in the next couple of sessions before qualifying tomorrow, or it could be another long weekend in the lives of a Haas driver. Right, so we've got 2 minutes left, so we'll sort of into the final few laps here. Yeah, so if we look at the gap at the moment, it's just less than 2/10 between Alonso and Verstappen. So Aston Martin will be happy with that. If they can continue that kind of gap in going into qualifying tomorrow, then they could make life a bit interesting. Might be able to out-qualify Sergio Perez. Might be able to get him to the front of the grid. Looking at where Alonso's faster than Stroll. And into the last final minute of the first session. DMX 908 saying there was Formula Racing in the early 2000s that raced by country, but I don't remember what it was called. A1. I actually went to an A1 when I was, I must have been 11, 12. That was at Kalami. I don't remember when they started. A1 Grand Prix. When was that? When did it finish? I think it was 2009 was the last. 2009. So I must have watched it a couple of seasons before it went under. We had a South African team there. It was quite cool. We had a Kalami race that I went to. Couldn't tell you who was racing, who won. I was a long time ago. Didn't know much about it, to be honest, before I was invited to go. And I was very young. But yeah, I suppose probably the closest I'll ever get to going to a Formula One, unless they bring this down to Kalami. But right, that is officially the end of FP1. The time has finished. Let's see what Logan Sargent comes out with. And he'll finish at 14th fastest there, will Logan Sargent. So interesting first session here in Saudi Arabia. Might be able to better himself here a little bit, Logan Sargent. Said to be the last one of the last few cars to go over there. So not much there from Logan Sargent there. So the checkered flag for all the cars. And that's how things will end. Right, so the two Red Bulls pretty dominant in that first session. Fernando Alonso coming there as well. So yeah, let's kind of recap that that session, shall we? And we've got the best way to look at this. What we're actually going to do is we're going to move to the new stream, and then we'll recap it from there so that you guys know exactly where to find me a bit later. So thank you very much for joining. We're going to redirect that to the second stream. That'll be up live basically instantly. It's the second session, so we'll go there right now, and I'll join you guys in